After using Matlab for many years, I recently started using Python. The first thing you notice using Python after almost any other language is the use of indentation with whitespace to define program structure. At first I disliked this so much that I decided to try to hack Python to get rid of this feature. In this video I show you how I did this. First of all, let's take a look at a simple program in Python and the same program in Matlab. I'm working on Windows, and on the top left window I'm using Notepad++ as my Python editor. On the bottom left, I'll run my Python script using a Cygwin shell window to call Python 3.7. On the right, I have the Matlab 2015 editor and command window. The function I'm going to use is this one here that just converts a string with words separated by underscores into a camel case format which capitalizes every word except the first one. To test the function, I just call it with this hello Python function string. Notice that the Python is nicely indented, making it easy to read. This indentation is not just for show. There's no keyword or braces to end any loop, so this indentation is critical to the program function. This is standard Python. On the right, I have an equivalent program in Matlab. The core function is pretty similar, with just some syntax and function name differences. I test the Matlab code with the same string called by this function at the top. Notice that Matlab also has indentation for code loops. The difference in Matlab is that you can type your code however you like and then use Ctrl-I to auto-indent it. This is possible because Matlab closes every loop with an end keyword. Auto-indent is not possible in Python because there's nothing signifying where the loop ends, so you have to manually indent the code to the right level. So let's test my Python program. It converts the string to camel case and prints it. Now I do the same for Matlab, with the same result. So what's my problem? The problem is that without a keyword or symbol to signify the end of a loop, a slight error in the whitespace means the program doesn't run correctly, and there's no way to auto-indent everything, so it has to be done manually. If I get the indent wrong in Python, I get an error. This even extends to if I have a tab instead of spaces, so there's no visible difference. In Matlab, the interpreter doesn't rely on the indentation and still runs the code correctly. I can also auto-indent to make the code readable. An example of when this becomes a pain is if you copy a code block from somewhere else and paste it into your program. Let's say I want to replace the word Python with Pythonen whenever I find it in my string. Just as an example, I'll do this by adding a block of code copied from somewhere else. Of course it won't run because the indent is not correct. I have to manually indent the code before it will run correctly. If I do the same thing in Matlab, and then run, it will run correctly without any manual indenting. and then I can just auto-indent to get a nice layout using Control-I. So I'd like to modify Python to include the end keyword as Matlab does. The loss of readability is only minor, and it will give the ability to have some of the good features that Matlab has. I'm going to call my new language Pythonen. It's Python, but with a closing end. I left the D off the end to fit in with the Python philosophy of not having ends. Of course, this won't run now because the Python interpreter doesn't understand the end keyword. So how do I use this? The first thing I do is to modify my editor. Notepad++ allows plugins, and there's a plugin called Python script that allows you to run Python scripts to automate editing tasks. I'll put the link to the version I'm using in the description. Any scripts that you write, you place in the following path. Under your user area, find app data, then roaming. Then find Notepad++. Go to Plugins, Config, Python script, and Scripts. Place your scripts in here. Now they will appear under the Plugins menu. You can add them to the menu and make shortcuts, or just run them from the Scripts submenu. I've written 3 scripts that I find useful. Let's go back to the original Python. The first script I've written converts Python to Pythonen. I've allocated to Control-Alt-N shortcut. You can see that it adds the end keyword to all the right places. The second script auto-indents Pyn. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. The third script is the reverse translation script. That removes all the ends and goes back to standard Python. Here's how I might use these scripts. Let's go back to the original function I used before. I want to copy a block of code from somewhere else. First, I want to work in Pyn, so I convert to Pyn using Control-Alt-N. Now I copy the code block. The copied block is in Pyn, so I have the end keyword included. Now I run the auto-indent script, and everything gets nicely indented. So I've found a way to edit my scripts without ever having to do any manual indentation. Once I've finished my editing, I could convert the script back to Python and then run the script with the normal Python interpreter. That's okay for editing, but I'd really like to just run the Python without having to convert back to standard Python every time I want to test it. If I could get the interpreter to just ignore the ends, the code would run because it's properly indented. I don't want to rewrite and recompile the interpreter, but there is a way to hack it. I just need to get the interpreter to treat the ends as comments, as if the code really looked like this. Here's how I do that. The first thing Python does before running a script is to decode the file. The default assumption is that the file is UTF-8, but Python 3 provides the possibility to provide your own encodings and specify them in a comment at the start of the file. If you find your Python installation, you find the encoding files under the lib folder and then encodings. There are dozens of encodings, including the default UTF-8. For this example, I'm going to use the ASCII encoding file. This is the file. There's a section in here that does the decoding, and this gives us a hook to intercept the file after it's been decoded, but before it's sent to the interpreter. So I'm going to copy this file and modify it. I'll make a version called Python ASCII. Then I'll change my encoding comment to specify Python ASCII as the encoding. In the Python ASCII file, I modify the decoding section. Comment out the existing return and store the decoded file in a string instead. Then I convert the string using a function, convertPython for run, and then I return the converted file to the interpreter. I put the conversion function lower down in the file. This takes the string, splits it into individual lines, then loops through each line and replaces the end with #end to make it into a comment. Now I can run my Python ASCII encoded file, and that function will be called. Success! I can run Python with the standard Python interpreter. Finally, to get Notepad++ to style the ends as keywords, you can add end as a keyword. Go to Style Configurator, select Python, and then Keywords, and then add end to the user-defined keywords, and press Save and Close. Then the ends will appear like the other keywords. No programming languages were harmed in the making of this video.